Hello, people. How you doing? My day start horrible. My main computer die. But when I realize that I'm gonna be doing a live with my favorite serial killer catcher, my face is smile. I'm gonna bring Jana Monroe to the stage because we have a lot of to dig about. Is your body language, your attitude, your demeanor make you a victim? Is a victimology? Body language is a victimology aspect that you have. My favorite serial killer catcher. And please, people, do questions because this is, you never going to have the chance to have a person who deal with so many serial killers and so many cases to ask question. Hi, Jana. How you doing, love?
Hi, Susan. Thank you so much. And I like my handle there that you just gave me, serial killer catcher. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, the problem is the dyslexia. People are understanding the speech impediment. I says leopard, and I cannot, in all the languages that I speak, I have a word or two that I cannot say. Leopard is one of them. So, but when I'm doing shopping, it says I'm paying, so I can name it whatever I want.
Whatever you want. That's right. Yeah.
So, Jana, for the ones who living under a rock, can you tell us who you are beside a badass woman?
Oh, well, thank you for that. Yeah, how about in a nutshell? I was in law enforcement for over 30 years. I started as a probation officer, a police officer. That was in California. I joined the FBI. And when I joined the FBI, I kind of went all over the place. And I had a few things that I focused on and was very grateful to have that opportunity. One was to be the first female criminal profiler in the FBI's then called Behavioral Science Unit, now Behavioral Analysis Unit. And for people who saw an ancient movie called Silence of the Lambs, the protagonist in that, who was fictional but based on reality, was Clarice Starling. And she was actually the protagonist based on me. And so that was kind of a neat thing I got to do early on in my career, was advise Jodie Foster for the movie. Then I went into the different facets of leadership in the FBI, and I was the special agent in charge of a couple of offices, Los Angeles, which is one of the largest. And then I was the first assistant director of the cyber division in the FBI right after 9/11. After that, I retired from the FBI and went into corporate America, which, Susan, was like landing on the moon for somebody who's been in the military or law enforcement. Very, very different culture. And what we're going to talk about today, I think, is the skill set that I learned in behavioral science and throughout my dealings with people. That behavioral aspect, and especially nonverbal communication, helped me out a lot in my then 17-year career in corporate security. There you have it.
I just put on the link, people. Jana have an amazing book, Heart of the Darkness, Serial Killers, the Behavioral Science Unit, and My Life as a Woman in the FBI. Please take a look. It's an audiobook too, for the ones like me that love audiobook. Go there. There are so many caveats and so many nuances about one of the most famous cases that you talk on the book is how you use people to find out a killer in Florida. Can you do a little caveat about the case, about the mother and the daughter, and how you find out the killer?
Yes, and you're referring to the Rogers case, and it was extremely tragic. Well, I think all homicides are tragic, but it was a mother, two daughters from Ohio. One of the daughters was graduating from high school. They'd never been out of the state of Ohio. Decided to go to Florida, to go to Disney World in Orlando, and then they wanted to go see the ocean in Tampa, the Gulf. And while they were there, unfortunately, a man invited them out in his boat to go see the ocean, and they were brutally murdered, and their bodies were found floating a little less than 72 hours after the estimated kill in Tampa Bay. And Tampa, Florida is really known, as a lot of Florida, it's a vacation tourist spot. And this really, really hurt business because people were afraid to go there. I had I guess I'd call it a fortune to be there at the time because I was in the Tampa office as an agent, but then was transferred a year later to the Behavioral Science Unit. Case went cold, and all the detectives that I had worked with a year previously came to Quantico, Virginia, where the behavioral science unit is located. And we went over every piece of evidence again. And that's what you do in cases that have gone cold. You've got to go over every little detail because something's been missed. And that's what we did. And there was a note that they had in their evidence folder that was giving instructions, driving instructions in cursive, in handwriting, from the hotel that they were at to the dock where they were going in the boat. And so I asked, whose handwriting is that? And they said, well, the mother's, Joan Rogers. So how do you know that? Silence. So, well, how do you know that? That's important. How do we know that is her handwriting? I know a lot of people don't do handwriting or cursive today, but it's very distinctive. So they went and asked the husband, father, who's still alive in Ohio. He said immediately, that's not my wife's handwriting. So we assumed, which is still not a good thing to do, that it was the offender, the bad guy that had done this. So before the internet, Dale Mabry was a huge 4-lane each-way street in Tampa with billboards. And we went to the business community who offered up, you have to pay for billboard advertising. And they said, oh, anything to help law enforcement solve this heinous case. So they put samples of the handwriting up on the billboard. Less than 2 days, they had 3 separate hits of a man's name, and they had identified that handwriting.
And this is an intro to the topic that we're going to talk today, is that do we have a demeanor, a body language, an attitude that make us a victim? And I will say, connected to that case, the innocency of the daughter and the mother made them a victim probably in that case. Yes. And sometimes innocence and ignorance is not always a bliss about that. The danger is on the face of the baby doll person, because none of the serial killers, if we do a study, and the most aggressors, they look like a serial killer, or they look like a person that you're going to run away from. Actually, they're more they're like hunting, and you're hunting by them. But there are certain attitudes with all the experience you have, and we're going to talk about the studies about the CCTV camera and the inmates who pick up the same reasons that make you more a victim.
Oh, absolutely. And, during my years in the FBI, I interviewed offenders who didn't start with violence. They started with observation. Before a word was even spoken, the single thing that they were looking for and that they were scanning for was one thing: who presents the least risk to them. So in essence, what they were telling me is just by body language, they could scan right away and say, okay, this person might push back. They might give me resistance. I'd have trouble with them. This one's easy target. And then they would give me the following characteristics, the traits that they looked for. And Susan, I know we're going to get into the actual studies, but what was amazing to me is just their instinctual innate reading. And sociopaths, psychopaths are much more in tune to that than your regular people. And that's because they're looking for victims. They're looking for vulnerabilities for someone that they can victimize. And their traits were, I don't want to say identical, but highly matched with the ones that the studies did. And they just told me off the top of their head when I was speaking with them.
Actually, I have done some exercise with the students, and I can pick up what somebody's vulnerable. I need to redo my heart psychopath checklist. Now you think like psychopath, are like, okay, I'm going to need to review my heart. And by the way, for the people on the show, we're going to put it later because, again, my computer died at 5 o'clock in the morning. I've been doing a copy of all the studies and the 20 traits that heart determined as a psychopathy checklist is not to be diagnosed in anyone. Is only so for fun reader. Please don't use it against anyone, neither in your loved ones, because you're not a psychiatrist, you're not qualified. I only put as a merit fun reading, and it's going to be ready probably this evening.
So let me just say one thing about that too, because in the past, and I know, and as being a part of this, when we would tell people, your susceptibility to being an easy target, to being a victim, and that would a lot of times be received by the victim is that it was their fault and that they're being blamed. That's not it at all. The things that we're going to talk about here are for situational awareness, or to help prepare yourself just to be aware to not look like an easy target. But it's totally on the offender. When you look at it, that somebody was attacked or became a victim. And this is not a blame game at all.
No, not at all. But that's the reason we need to be aware. Sometimes the fact that to have in your headphones and openly be more concentrated in a conversation when you're walking on the street and you go with your handbag moving, that I think that moments make you a victim of a predator more than as completely circumstances. I messed my knee and I was walking with a cane, and I refused to go to the city because I know that I'm not going to be stable either if somebody bump on me. And at that moment, that month, then I have my knee and not on top of my game. It would make me 30 days a victim for any burglar, any situation in the city of Chicago. So that was moment. It's not that I consider myself a weak person or a victimology in any point.
Right. I mean, and that is definitely a circumstance. But what you touched on is part of the, if you want to get into some of the characteristics, the gait or somebody just the movement are indicating they have no situational awareness. I mean, when what you gave as an example, headphones on, a phone out, a purse, they're just totally in their own world. They're not looking at what's around them, not listening to what could be behind them, be beside them. All of the clues or the cues that we have as people, they're masking by not paying attention.
And all this started with a conversation with Jana. Is I have a luxury that I need to share because I need to brag about a few things in my life. One of them is we have nerd moments when we get together and we talk about studies and weird things, and we have so much fun and we take notes and we go through. And one of the conversation I talk about the studies is, okay, let's do a show. This is going to help a lot of people. Summer is coming back. People is going to go back to the streets. So why not prepare you? And this is started with a study done in 1981 in London. And when people says why all your masters are in the UK, is I don't think that Europe is better than United States, but UK is way ahead in everything that has to do with neuroscience and behavioral studies. And these studies from the beginning, 1981. The study was done by Grayson and Stein. And in 2013, Book, Costello, and Camilleri replicate the same study. What it was, they grabbed CCTV camera, or how we call here video cameras, about people who was victim of different crimes. We're not going to specify the crime, just victim of crimes. They bring that CCTV footage inside jail and they show it to inmates. And with a scary accuracy, the inmates pick up the same victims walking by the street, no sound, no any previous information about what happened. They pick the same people to be victim. No, they don't talk about again what kind of victimology the people were, but it says if I need to attack or do something to someone, it's going to be these people. And that blew my mind because again I started thinking how many things I do when I driving with the window open and I have my arm out with my watch, like that is the way to make me a victim. And they point those things on the study. I cannot wait to see what we'll do a study right now with headphones, the way we disconnect. And in the time that we're supposed to be more connected, we are more disconnected. But let's go to because again, my brain go all over the place. But it was crazy. And you went through deep on the study because you know better than I am.
Yeah. I was just going to say, yeah, that's what is so amazing when you talk about the inmates. And obviously the study was different than the experience I had in actual interviewing, but it's the same experience. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like they would say to me, and they're predominantly males, right? I think out of all the ones that there were two females, but they had the same observations, is they would bring out like a gait, a walk, right? Okay, so somebody that has short, uneven strides, reduced speed, or like shuffling. And I know I've noticed this too, sometimes with older people or people who are out of shape, they tend to walk laterally more so than one foot in front of the other. And just that posture, that unbalance, that unevenness is a signal. And when I asked them to articulate, I mean, I think I knew in my mind, what is that signal? But they said in unresounding unanimously is that meant somebody probably was not in good shape, not in good balance. That means they really aren't taking care of themselves. that means that they're not going to be able to give much resistance, or they're not going to. Just like when you just spoke about sticking your arm out the window and with a watch, you think, well, what does that have to do with anything? That kind of indicates a laissez-faire attitude, right? I'm having a good time, or I'm in my own world. I'm just going to stick this out into the air. Feels nice. You're not really thinking about where you are in your surroundings. They pick that same gait up. Also, movement, talking about when someone doesn't stand up straight and they're collapsed and they're kind of walked over. That goes with the same thing with the way they're walking. Their posture indicates either they're not healthy, they're not paying attention, they're depressed. And that's another thing, your facial expressions. If you look sad, depressed, scared, as you well know, and I had the offenders tell me this, in a nanosecond, they can take a look at that and go, oh, okay, he or she, typically she for a victim, is again in their own world. They're sad, they're upset. That makes them more vulnerable, makes them vulnerable if you want to approach them for a conversation and say something uplifting so that they're going to be more attracted to you. Oh, here's a nice person to help me out of my state of being a victim. And I think the other thing too is, I'll just call it asynchronous movement. Somebody that's kind of disjointed and has that sad face, depressed look, walking, not like they're in charge of anything. They have no purpose for their walk. They're just going from point A to point B. They don't have that look of confidence, that look of scanning the area to see what's around, that look of I need to take care of myself. And all of those things were extremely visible and resonated with offenders.
Can we do a little translation? We didn't agree on this. Louis just says we're going to jump. These are the studies. Let's go to one of our nerd tantrums when we get together. I would like to translate impossible and make similitudes with work-wise, violence and work-wise, and in dating. And dating is going to be a completely other thing because 2 years ago I did a live with a person, former Mossad agent who has surrender awareness, and we were talking about how stupid we are and how much information we give with the car, with all the things. But let's go to the easy one, that is work. As there are signs, verbal, physical, and sometimes silence are signs that you are more propense to be vulnerable to any aggression or be the punchback of somebody else.
Yeah, and you're speaking about in a work setting?
In a work setting.
Yeah, absolutely. Those same things translate to that. And I think, when you look at the vulnerability cues, that it's a perceived opportunity. It's not personal worth or actual strength. It's a perceived opportunity. So if you're giving some of those same cues off to someone in the work sense, that gives them, they're going to take advantage of that vulnerability from a bullying standpoint, or, she doesn't really know what she's doing, or she's being quiet on this. So that's my cue to go ahead and take over. I'm not speaking in this particular sense about any kind of a sexual, aggression, but it's an aggression that's a bullying sort of thing, which can lead to the others.
Yeah. Sometimes when people says, I need you to show up the best version of yourself at work. And sometimes are not to be shared. Because when you're depressed, you have a problem that happened to anyone. You would ask me for anything today at 8 a.m. I was like ballistic with my computer because I have so much material that I worked with a client yesterday. I would be vulnerable to any suggestion. You would tell me I need to get the kidney of somebody to get my computer working at 8 a.m. I would take it. So those things people don't understand. Those are signs that you show I'm vulnerable because I'm stressed or I'm putting my head in another place.
Well, and I think that's true if you want to take that out to social media, and that's your presence also in the workplace. The more that you give out of your personal life, your personal one, I'm upset about this, I'm depressed about this, that, and again, that's more like a victim mentality, right? Saying, and everybody has problems. If you're a person, you're going to have problems. You're going to have ups and downs. But does that really need to be shared with your work associates and colleagues and others? I'm not talking about friends. I'm talking about a professional environment where maybe not everybody has your best interest or really does care about that. So you start, regurgitating all these issues that you have in your problems. And again, that's verbally, but non-verbally still showing some of those indicators. That's going to allow people who want to prey on victims and those vulnerabilities. That's going to give them the signal that you're one of those.
Did you work in any case on dating sites or dating situations where a person ended up being a victim of the first date?
Yes, I've worked on several of those. Yeah, and I think, and it was, of course, after the fact, and assessing the situation, assessing the case. The two that come to mind, I won't mention names, but the women who became victims on this, one was completely situationally unaware, and the other one brought her issues to the first date, verbally, but in addition to how she behaved. And I had the opportunity to speak to the offender on this one, and he indicated that he sensed that vulnerability right away because she seemed meek. Even some of the posture things we were talking about, she said a little humped over, she kind of hugged herself. She didn't own the room. She didn't air any kind of confidence. And he interpreted that what she was looking for, and I mean a savior, kind of like the expression we say, a knight in shining armor, someone to take her away from her problems, from her issues. And he wasn't interested in that at all, but he was interested in violating her sexually and did so.
One of the things that I tell friends when they get divorced late in life and says, you don't need all those stickers telling absolutely everything about your life in the back of your truck. I know if you play golf, if you have a small dog that is not a man at home, you tell me everything. Where's your kids? I understand it's the honor that your kids are in certain, do not put it. Just put a skull and says, I carry guns. That's the only sticker you need to put. And if you're going to go to a date or a place that you can be vulnerable, do not bring that van. Take a taxi, take any other kind of transportation. Do not put pictures of your kids in your dating profile. Do not share pictures of your kids in your social media, because you're telling, oh, we just check in on this and this with my kids. Now you're giving information, because being a victim has to do with many, many layers. In this case, we concentrated more on the aggression on the street. But those are indicators that are giving you too much information to become a victim unconsciously, when something that I do for pride, showing my kids where they do, and all those stickers on the back of the truck.
Yeah, and I think what you're looking at is something that I wrestle with and have all of my career, is don't want to be an alarmist, but you want people to be situationally aware, correct? And now, because of social media, because of dating apps, all that information can be out there. I think we spoke previously about the prolific serial killer Ted Bundy. He had to break into women's houses, the ones he selected and targeted as victims, because there was no internet to do that. But he found out just exactly what we're talking about. Did she have kids? Did she have a date? What was her favorite music? What's her favorite perfume? All of those kinds of things, so that he would be able to make an approach. Now, if you have that stuff on a dating app and social media, if someone wants to use it for nefarious purposes, they can. They find out you have children. Anything when somebody wants to hurt you, the best way is what's important to you, to put that in harm's way.
Love is a weakness in the case of a perpetrator, not because love is a victim, make you a victim, but it can be used against you. You need to be extremely careful.
Right. And I think, again, that's that cautious thing. You don't have to be suspect of everybody, right? You don't have to be standoffish of everyone, but you cannot go on that assumption that everyone is nice and kind and wants the best for you. That's extremely naive.
Love bombing, they call it. Too good, too soon, too fast.
Right.
Pay attention. And again, the people who take you as a victim, in any either physically, emotionally, for bullying, whatever, they don't start with aggression. They start with things they observed about you. So what else do you find on astonish you for the studies done in 81 and 2013 regarding the street approach and the body language on the streets?
What I found astounding is how much they knew in 81. I mean, what I find astounding is what we've already recited, is how your non-professional can take the intuitive part of it that they've enhanced upon because of their motivation, right? They want to take advantage of somebody, right? It's not for good purposes, but how, without, they didn't go read any books or study anything or whatnot. This is something that they learned through doing. It's something from their inner intuition. It's like, oh, I get it. I see a pattern. I see a pattern of activity. Then you see years later an official study that documents this in a way that, you can use for academia and other things. People love numbers, right? 32%, 62%. None of the people could, no, I do too. But what I'm talking about, that does not diminish or minimize the information they were telling us. They had it, but could not present it in the same professional way. But it surprised and astounded me how accurate they were.
Yeah, and it's fascinating me too how they concentrate on the feet and the legs. And
Yeah.
actually makes sense, because if your legs are bubbly or you walk funny, all your body it's unstable. People don't pay attention. There are three things, and I'm gonna sound rude for some people, but the feet, your rear end, and your column are extremely important if they are not aligned, because they create imbalance. And that was told to me by a doctor, and says, okay, what are the 3 or 4 parts of your body that you need to make sure that they align, to make sure your body is in balance? And when he told me about the rear end, says, well, if you have hemorrhoid on any of thing, you have inflammation that affect the nerves and affect the nerves on the legs. I'm like, I never thought about it. And we spend so much time sitting that. But in the study in 1981, they talk about how important is the stand, how
Yes.
you pose yourself. And actually the power pose start with the feet and the legs.
Well, and if you want to take a look at institutions that emphasize that, you look at the military, and you look at least the way law enforcement used to be. Okay, so I'm going back when I started in that, and they focus adamantly on posture, how you walk, how you carry yourself, how you stand. You have to have your core muscles. When you're younger, it's easier. Everything's easier. But I mean, to stand up straight, you have to have strength in your core muscles. And I think that's so often why you see people hunch forward. And you take a look, maybe some name recognition. Jason Statham. We could go with some of the young guys now.
Yummy.
Yeah. Yes. All right.
I'm human.
Settle down. But I think if you look at how they walk, I was just thinking of The Beekeeper. I just happened to watch that movie the other day. But walks, of course, he was a professional athlete, a swimmer, but he still walks that way, takes up space. When you talk about spatial relations, doesn't walk like this. And you take a look, and he's looking around, he's swiveling, kind of has a mean, not inviting look on his face. I mentioned him because I was talking with someone about a year ago about that, an offender, somebody in prison. And that's what they said. Oh, no, I won't use the words he did. I'll paraphrase. But he said, yeah, no, I wouldn't take him on as a victim. I'd become a victim. Without even knowing who he was. He didn't know who the guy was. I showed him some video of that. And that was, no, I wouldn't pick on him. And so I use that as an example of what you're talking about. Butt, legs, feet, everything aligned, and nothing, somebody paying attention to it. So you can have an injury, right? And temporarily you're going to have that. But to go back to muscle memory and how you typically walked, that's what you need to be aware of, that's not a normal thing to be out of alignment.
Yeah, and women sometimes walk with those high heels that are not done for you, honey. Take it off. So they love their shoes that are for home, car, restaurant, car, home, not to be walking on the street, because it make you look, first of all, they're not elegant. And second of all, don't give you a stability. They don't give you a place to where you fit. Another thing they're talking is about the swinging on the arms. If you swing the arms too much, you lost balance. It's help you to sometimes to do power walking, but power walking is not walking on the street. Keeping your arms kind of near to the body, not too attached to the body that you look small, is give you a better balance of reaction. If my arms are far away from the body, I don't have the same reaction that my arms are here, no?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And I think, that's another good example of like power walking or doing something different. It's for exercise, but if you're out there doing that, again, that's going to make you look more vulnerable, because that's not a normal walk. So you've got to focus on doing that, because if your mind starts wandering, next thing you know, you're like this. So you've got to, okay, arm up. And I think that's something to do in a safe setting or inside a gym where they have a walking trail.
Yeah, and actually, I don't remember. Again, I have the luxury to have it for myself more than once. We were talking about that you went for a walk, and a guy was getting too near to your personal space. You slow down, you let it go, and just was another walker. But the way that he was approaching, something in your head, your memory triggers says, that something is not right. And you decide to not to become a victim, and you prefer to retrieve and see, even if nothing happened, then you prefer to prevent. And that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this incident that you're talking about, and this was during the day, right? and it was a relatively safe park. However, again, I don't wear headsets. I have my head on a swivel. I'm enjoying my walk, but I'm paying attention, and I could hear. Not that there was heavy breathing. I could hear this guy's footsteps, and they were heavy footsteps, and they were getting closer to me. And he was invading my space. And I want to see who's behind me. And so I moved over probably about 5 feet and turned and looked. And when I mentioned this to a couple of women that I was having a conversation with, they said, "Oh, that's rude. I would never do that." And I said, "Well, number one, I don't think it's rude. But number two, would you rather be rude or dead, or rude or injured?" I said, "I didn't know who he was. He was invading my space. I got little things in the back of my, what is this?" I was uncomfortable. So I decided, and it was nothing, and he went by, but I'd much rather do that. And I would do that every time than feel uncomfortable and then actually be sorry.
Actually, Gavin DeBecker and The Gift of Fear. Please, if you need to give a book to any kids going to college, if you're going to give a book that is going to put things in perspective, give that book as a gift. It's audiobook, it's easy to digest, it's kind of strong. But on the first chapter, he talked about a woman that when the guy approached her, I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's good to go through how she talked about the episode. But one thing it says, "Oh, I'm not going to be rude." And the guy says, "Oh, you don't want me to help you? You don't want to be helped?" And she thought, "Oh, I'm all not going to be rude." The guy tried to be nice. What happened after, you can read the book, but if she's the first chapter, you must understand how difficult it was. But women tend to say, "I don't want to be rude." And men tend to use it like, "Well, you want a man? I try to be the man. I try to help you." And it gets you, no matter how intelligent you are. In that moment, the circumstance, it make you vulnerable, because at the end of the day, you want a man to be a gentleman. And if they offer, like, well, you try to be nice only.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I think that is, at least I'm going to talk about in the West, right? Most women were raised like, "Oh, I don't want to be rude." And when someone's just, they're not reading the situation, or they're not reading beyond the words, right? It's like, he's just trying to help. He just went, "Yeah, well, I don't need help with this at this particular point in time." But more concerned, when you look at your priority of the situation, their number one thing is just not being rude. And I think we can either reframe the word rude, but I think they'd feel much better if they were more assertive in something like that. And it's not rude, but it's more assertive as to what someone's motive is.
Yeah, all the case studies, everything that when somebody ended up becoming a victim, it came the common denominator, like, he was so nice, he was so approachable, he offered to help, I didn't realize. And that's a moment says, okay, like you says, you want to be rude or you want to be dead? And sometimes, and people don't start understanding how the physiology of our body and hormones work too. Fear and arousal happen on the same part of the body. And people who are aggressors, they smell your fear, because fear can be a smell. When you get to a room and start feeling fear for no reason, is a reason for that. Somebody is fear. So that fear can be a smell by an aggressor, and that fear stimulates the excitement on the brain. When you stimulate the fear, the other person is stimulating the excitement.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that is a great point, Susan, because it's something that is exuded naturally. You can't control that. You can't. It's kind of like people who have a conscience when they're taking a polygraph test. That's the premise of that you cannot control some of those biological things, the physiological things that are going to happen. And it's the same thing with fear. And you get people that are really honed in on that. Again, their motivation is to take advantage of, to victimize somebody. So they're going to hone in on that very quickly.
And another thing is gaze. In Chicago, where I live, even though I spend more time outside Chicago, I remember it was 2023, I think. It was in the middle of the lottery in Chicago. Everybody was afraid. My office and my flat is in downtown. And I remember walking with another lady, and she says, "Let's cross the street." No, that shows weakness. It says, "I don't want to cross." And it was nothing to do with the race, with their dress. You know, they were looking for trouble. I don't know if they were attacked, but they were looking for trouble and were well dressed. And it says, "Look what I'm going to do. If you don't show that you can be a victim, or you can be a prey of a victim. I'm going to show you how I will manage this situation if were you. And I walk away and I look the feet of all the guys that were on the site, and all the feet were pointing to one of the guys. So it says, this is the leader. So I lock my eyes with the guy without aggression, and I did this. Hi. I show my neck. I says hi. Now he knows me. And he doesn't know because I say hi. He knows me from before. The guy lowered the head. He says hi, and nobody bothered with us. It was risky. It was crazy. My adrenaline kick on those things. But I want to show this young lady and says, you need to decide how to do it. If I need to walk past, either I walk going small and looking down or looking at my cell phone. If I'm going to confront, do that. And it happened. I'm not saying go do that and provoke situations, but the gaze is important to determine, I see you, I know who you are.
Absolutely. And I'm just smiling because I've had several, and I won't bore everybody with this, but I've had several situations just in the last month where I did that. And you are so correct. You're taking the initiative, right? Asserting and saying, hi, I see you. So not only did you approach first, he heard your voice too. And you looked him in the eye. What in that split second, you just signaled to him, I'm not afraid of you. And I see you. Yeah. And that's powerful. That's very powerful.
And familiarize
too that we're so visual people. It's not, I'm not confining this to the United States by any means, but we're so visual. When I had interviewed some victims that lived of serial killers or serial sexual assault, they said, well, he was so good looking and he seemed so charming. And I always use Charles Manson, who actually never killed anybody, but he was in prison for life for the Tate LaBianca murders. But he had the look, I think people wish there was something that signaled him out, right? So he had weird eyes and he carved a little thing in his forehead and his hair was disheveled. They want to say that, oh, look, you should be afraid of that person. Where there's somebody that's really handsome, really good looking, walks the kind of walk we're talking about with confidence, and then tries to be nice. It's going to be far more, I think your guard is going to be down and the signals can be mixed, because it's like, oh, I was taken aback because he's so good looking. He had je ne sais quoi, if you will.
I use the same phrase, and it's so true. Something about the neck and the gaze. Let's put it this way, people. I love faces that is with a special eyes, and eyebrows are the blinking of the signals. If I lift my eyebrows, even without saying hi, I lift my eyebrows and lock the gaze. That is like hi. Hi, you can say with the eyebrows. Think about it. You go into an elevator, two male, and you know who is the alpha because it's going to do this. Hi. They're going to show the neck and they're going to lift the head. Now, when somebody doesn't know you and is more reserved, the high is going to be neck down. Why? Because we protect the neck. Most people don't know, but the lungs have two bulbs. The only part of the body who have they have a spare part is the left lung. Why? Because get the flow from the neck to the brain, double the pressure. So instinctively, there are things that we protect. The abdomen, you can know when a woman is pregnant. I found out that my stepdaughter was pregnant because I saw a picture and says, oh my God, you're pregnant. Like, how do you know? Because you covering your belly in all the pictures. That only happen if you're pregnant. And the second one is that protecting the neck. So we know instinctively that we need to protect the neck. I'm telling you from the neuroscience and behavioral study, but you have seen that's something that keep you safe and alive when you were in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. You're correct on that. And I think also if you look at the hyoid bone, which is right here too, it takes very little pressure to crush that, and that'll crush your larynx. I mean, you just, with the part of your, killing here, but for the part of your hand, you just do a really hard thrust and that can do it. So it's in that same part of the neck that you're referring to. So I think all of those things instinctively, you just, you don't go like that, but you just put down so that it's not available.
It's funny. When I'm not feeling well, I use a turtleneck and a hat in my hat. It's like when you're a baby, they put a hat I use a turtleneck. It's instinctively, or I use something on my neck. It's like they're protecting me. I didn't realize I was doing that for many, many years. And I'm talking with a friend that is a psychologist and says, well, you're protecting what is vulnerable for you, your neck, instinctively, because I have a huge surgery. Most people don't know I have a bone transplant and neck fusion in my neck. So this is not wrinkle, is a scar. I'm extremely strong and I can kick you with this pinky, so don't take me as a victim. But for a long time, until my heel bone happened, I was using a turtleneck, not because of for the scar, it's because I felt there was too exposed. And if the people see then I have a scar and I have that in my neck, I can be vulnerable. That it took me years when I go deeper in this, the body language of aggression, why I was doing that unconsciously.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think, again, so many of these things we do unconsciously or subconsciously. And then when you do some study into it, it makes sense.
So and again, please, people, put it in context. Jana and I, from all the serial killers, Ed Kemper is the one who fascinates us the most. 6'9", no? 6'9"?
Yes.
6'9",
yes.
big.
And a big girth. Yeah, he's not a thin little guy. Yeah.
He's not. And he give himself, they didn't cut it like most of few of the serial killer, they need to be cut so they can tell the story. But in this case, he was extremely a charming man. And actually, one of your mentors was in an elevator with him when it says, if I want to break your neck, he wanted to smell the fear. He get aroused by the fear in that situation, no?
Yes. And he was actually with two male. One of them was my mentor. The other one was my colleague, and two of them. So here you have this big 6'9" guy who was maybe about the same age as they were at the time. So he wasn't a lot younger. We're talking in their 40s, and they were in good shape, but no, they were certainly not 6'9" with a girth like that. And he'd been in prison for a while. So I think you are exactly right. That was what he got off on, was smelling the fear and knowing what he just told him. He goes, we're alone in an elevator, and I could kill you right now. I could break your neck right now. Just that's all he said. And I remember them telling me, it was like, oh my, they hadn't been afraid of things for quite a while or for a long time, but they realized the situation that we're in. And for him to actually verbalize that it just sent a chill. It was a chilling effect. And he did not kill them, of course, but he, I think, really relished on the idea of the situation he created just by saying that.
I know it's going to sound weird too, but now we know, and after it's easy to talk. But if you see Ed Kemper, or you see the majority of the serial killers, they had crazy eye, and a lot of people says, oh yeah, it's easy to read a killer when you know there is a killer. But if you see all of them, they're charming. And Ed Kemper have that round face, is approachable. So you need to understand that it's about power, and these people is approachable. Like you says, I think the crazy one is Manson, but he did those things in his face when he was on the jail, not before.
That's correct. Yeah, he debased himself. But when you talk about Kemper, because he wasn't, and I'm here, we're getting into the visual, right? He wasn't, handsome like, let's just say, George Clooney, or even, Ted Bundy, by most people's standards, when he was young, he didn't look like that, but he looked like he was harmless. He looked approachable, yes. But if you recall that he would go to the local bar where the officers that were working on the case would have a beer after work and discuss, they considered him harmless and approachable. And they had seen him numerous times, and that there was no red flag for them about him. And he'd come over and amicably, gee, what are you guys talking about? And buy him a beer. And so all of the things that he did, they did not pick up on that at all.
Yeah, and I know that we went to what is our favorite topic about serial killers, and it's but here there's two things, and I wanna land the plane because it's my fault to take you. Jana is super organized. I'm the one who take her all over the place. So let's define. She's the serious, I'm the crazy one. So then we have two victimologies. One is, I don't remember, it was Dahmer or Ted Bundy that like to kill the victims and bring them back. So he feel the fear and the life getting out of their eye. Now I don't remember what serial killer was, but do you remember which one was?
It was Bundy.
Bundy. So that is one kind of the victimology, one kind of a predator. The one that is serial killer, they do it by power, not because they need to do it. And the other predatory situation is when somebody is trying to mock you, and that mugging ended up being more than mock and ended up in an incident. So we have two kind of predatorials: the one sexual abuse, the serial killers, the one who does it for pleasure, and the one who you maybe circumstantially, or for the way you walk, or for the way they perceive you, they make you a victim. Is correct? I'm missing some point there.
No. You're correct on that, definitely. And I think, well, I don't want to take us off on another tangent too, but when you talk about victims or why someone is a victim, there's, low, medium, and high risk victims too, when you look at the victimology and the people that became victims. And that was from profiling. You don't see that sometimes if you're to Google something on the internet. But let's say, for instance, someone is a housewife, happily married, husband, several children. She confines most of her, lives in a nice neighborhood, confines most of her activities to anything involving her children in the area, right? That makes her a low risk victim for something. But let's say she decides to go out one evening to a meeting in the PTA thing. However, the venue's different. It's dark. It's somewhere she hasn't been before. Her car breaks down. She doesn't know anything about, cars and what's wrong with the car. And then she finds out she doesn't have any bars on her cell phone. So right there, she's going to make herself vulnerable to a stranger that comes by. Not having situational awareness, she assumes everybody's nice. So if somebody stops by in a car and says, "May I help you?" more than likely she has gone from a low risk victim because of the lifestyle she leads and the situations she finds herself in, to a very high risk victim because of the circumstances, the environment, and her, I'm just going to say, naivete and dependence on someone else to help her.
A stupid situation, then I just remind me that I put myself in a stupid situation on Tuesday night. Monday night. I was going from my flat in Chicago to the flat to a friend. And I just realized if I take the street, I just need to make a right. And it's directly, I landed on his garage. And what happened, it was a construction. They didn't show in the MapQuest. And it was night. I know Chicago says, ended up taking the shortcut. I ended up behind the Morton Salt. For the people in Chicago, do you know that area? Their police want to get there. And I took the wrong shortcut, and I ended up in those 4 blocks that you don't have good signal, is dark, and it's not illuminated, because I used to live near there and I know the place. And when I left, I felt that my breathing went from the abdomen to the chest. And because I control, it says, what the heck I did. You need to check. Most people are like, I have the GPS is going to take me. What I was aware says, never again, because it's construction in Chicago all the time, leave the house again without checking construction, because I put myself in a situation that I shouldn't. My car can have a flat tire. Somebody can make me a flat tire to make me a victim. That is stupid situation. And again, I don't think they have the victimology personality. I put myself in a situation with a car, naked burglar. I was wearing my Cartier watch, nice shoes. I was wearing a lot of money and accessories because I was a special situation. And like, what the heck? I didn't realize.
Yeah, but Susan, even you, that's a great example. And thank you for sharing that. And a few minutes ago when you said, I have this, I'm not a victim, I have this in my little finger. But again, we're all human. And depending on the motivation and the intensity of somebody, they could certainly overpower if they have a gun. There's all kinds. So it's not like any of us are impervious to what happens. So your example is excellent. And like you talk about from a physiological standpoint, your breathing goes from here up to here. You're going to remember that. And even by you sharing that, it's like, I put myself in this situation. I'm not a victim, but I put myself in the environment to be one by doing X, Y, and Z.
Robin Drake says, you're never going to remember a situation that was dull. So
Robin's right.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, it's true. So I want to take that in consideration, and like we rely so much in many things that when they disappear, at that point, my GPS wasn't showing the construction, and none of the construction. I don't know why. Google, please, can you update the maps? And nothing in construction. And so now I know and navigate. So it says, I will not going to take more internal. I'm going to take the highway. Easy. I don't like to drive on the highway at night, but it's more risky to drive on the streets.
Well, and plus the thing you mentioned about construction, and this comes to mind, My husband just got a flat tire on his truck, and he's got some pretty hefty tires on the truck. It's happened twice in 2 weeks. And I said, well, what is going on? He's going through a construction site. I mean, that's nothing nefarious, but there's going to be nails and all kinds of things that can come there. So for Chicago, as you're talking about, there's a lot of those areas. It's certainly best to avoid them.
Definitely. So, Jana, if we can leave with a bullet point of things that avoid, and in a situation where, okay, I'm in the situation, what to do, because I know for myself, but I'm not an expert.
Okay, so what's the first question you want to?
So the first question is, okay, what to avoid to do, and if in any circumstance you are in a situation where you are a victim of any situation, what to do, because we tend to go hysterical, men and women. Don't get me wrong. I have seen men pee themselves and me like, really? So it's not about gender. What to do? First of all, what to avoid, and if it's happened, what to do.
Okay, great on that. And I think, what to avoid, we can kind of go back. What to avoid is physically not making yourself look like a victim to these predators that have that fabulous instinct to size you up in a second. We're talking about gait, how you walk, your movement, your facial expressions, what you're doing. Don't make yourself look like a victim or vulnerable. So right there, you're potentially avoiding that. To take it over to, yes, okay, you become a victim. I think it's easier said than done. I get that, is not to panic. Like you said, non-gender specific, you've seen people pee their pants or, whatever. When you're doing that, you're giving into the fear. You're giving into the situation, that flight or fight sort of a thing. So keep your head about what you're doing, assess, and it doesn't take that long to assess whatever the situation you're in. I don't think you can give a blanket formula because it really does depend what the situation is. But the number one thing is not to panic, because your biggest asset is your brain. And so think about it. So you can look at some situations that people have been in and they lived to tell about it. And sometimes it's a circumstance of variables, but in all of it, they thought before something happened. They didn't just panic and let the other person have that control, because that's what it's all about when you're victimizing someone. When a predator is victimizing someone, they want control. So if you think about it, what the situation is, don't give them the control.
I think that you nail it like always. It's about control. It's about controlling you. And one thing is the mugging, they take your wallet, and another one is the control. And under that circumstance, I find myself breathing on the chest. I calm myself down because I know how to do that. But we need to remember not too flashy. Take control. Your gaze, your feet, your hand. Don't go all over the place in your body. How, Jana, we can control the breathing? Because I think when you breathe wrong, let's put it this way, when adrenaline is hitting, you start breathing wrong. There's less oxygen on the brain, less oxygen for run, and what happened is you start getting laser view, and you lose the content and context of what is happening around you. So to synthesize, we're in this situation. What are the awareness on those situations and breathing process to avoid to have the laser focus visual and lose what is going on around you?
Again, that's like being aware of it and then making calmness. When I did shooting investigations, so in agent situations where there'd been a shooting, and we interviewed them, they never knew what was going on around them. The adrenaline was pumping. They were focused. Someone was shooting at them. They were returning fire. That's all they were focused on. So it's the same kind of physiological reaction that you're talking about. But like you became aware of it. It's like, oh, I'm panicking. That's a sign of panic. So consciously take deep breaths. A couple of deep breaths are going to give you that oxygen flow that you need. And then that should be a reminder, if you practice this kind of a thing, that, there's stuff out around him. There's my peripheral, right? Everything in my world isn't right here now, it's out here. And I need to be in charge of all of my faculties to be able to respond to the situation I'm in.
Humans are extraordinary if you know what are your boundaries and your limitations. You can become everything you want under the circumstances and your proper limitation. I'm not going to be Miss Universe. I'm hitting 60, so it's not going to happen. So let's be serious. But we are more resilient. We are equipped more than we think about it. It's difficult under circumstances to be clear. But if you prepare yourself when you're gonna go to a meeting, because a bull, you know they're gonna conquer a bully on that room with a client. You're gonna be on the street. You're gonna be dark. Sometimes it's better $10 to spend in a taxi and not to save money. Be careful when you saving the money. No, don't walk those 5 blocks. Sometimes it's not about the money. It's those 5 blocks. If they find out what you're doing, so those are things that like, oh, duh, I do know that. And why don't you apply it?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. There are so many things you could do. And I like the way that you applied it then also to the work, to the boardroom, to this sort of a thing. That's a different type of bullying. And once you maybe have an idea of your colleagues, your superiors, and who's going to kind of say what, you can be prepared for that and not fall for something, and especially not get emotionally responsive to it. If they say something demeaning, dismissive, or offensive, that's going to give them the hand up, right? That, oh my God, she's so emotional. And to just, it's a different type of battle, but again, it goes back to control.
And most people don't know, but there is a reason why men and women react differently until a stress situation. We go again to Precambric. I love to cook, and I never learned to cook because all my family cook, half Italian, half Jewish, like it's part of the DNA. And I read this amazing, I'm doing more research because I got fascinated. The Precambric reaction for women are the ones who take care of the offsprings and the house and the village. So the men even went around. So in order to let the men know that it was danger, the pitch of the voice need to go high and be verbal like a siren to inform that it is danger. For men, it was to keep quiet, to listen for the sirens. So the way we react is not that women are hysterical and men, they don't react until situations. We are codedly aware that under stress, we do what we know to do and we're coding to do. So if you go to the deviation of the norm, that is a way to take control, no?
Oh, absolutely. That's very well said. That is the way to take control. And that's good when you look at just the DNA part and the difference between the genders. So it's true. It's something we're programmed with it. So it's not a good or a bad. It's how it is.
We are who we are. My love, again, my favorite serial killer catcher. I don't know.
Well, may I say something to you? You made a comment. I was kind of offended by it that you're not like Miss Universe. I think we should start a category called Senior Miss Universe, and then I would definitely have you as a candidate.
You know what? I never wanted to do it when I was 20. I put it at an extreme that, and I'm okay. I don't have the same strength. Other people are stronger than other women, but it's okay. You need to be aware of your possibilities and you need to be aware of your options. I know if I confront a 6'9" foot, I want to be more psychological winning the situation than physically. So I'm going to keep my distance, try to reasoning with the person, but I'm not going to expose myself to an aggression like I did when I was walking in the street. It was too dark. But it says, I was automatically in behavior. Where are the feet pointing? Who is the leader? And at least if it's not, they saw me, then I wasn't afraid. I wasn't confronted. Hey, what are you doing? Like, hi. And I smile. It was opening. Hi. No, how you doing? Nothing to confront conversation. I didn't want it to stop talking because that is another thing you need to be careful.
You didn't escalate it. That was perfect. Yeah.
But again, it was my ignorance and limitations taught me that under I have the luxury that I have been trained and with Mark Lothar, Jack Cambrian, hostile negotiation, and I understand, and with the police and the great people understanding, and the under violent or stress circumstances, you need to keep your things together. But under stress, we tend to go to our safe place. But if you learn those things, if you're incorporating those things, it's like to pray. You don't remember. If I need to say, oh, get me the national anthem. If I need to write it, I don't know how. But if I need to sing it, it's so embedded in my core, then I can sing the national anthem by memory, but I don't know where I recall it. So these kind of shows are for that reason.
Okay, see, that is perfect when you talk about muscle memory, right? People can, I believe, can reprogram themselves, but it takes training and it takes discipline and it takes the desire to do it, but you can do it.
So the book of Jana, it's on the comments. I see on. Okay, so we have a question. Thank you very much. I think the people get so fascinated. Super conversation. Thank you. So, Sam, thank you. Probably too late for the queue. Have you ever used animal behavior studies with considering human behavior, comparative psychology? You want to
Um,
go?
yeah, I'll go ahead with that one. So, yes, when it comes to the non-verbal communication, so when you're talking about comparative psychology, I think, and specifically with dogs, because although I was never a canine handler, I worked a lot with those who did when we were looking for suspects and looking for offenders, and it was interesting the psychology that was used with the animals, because obviously most of that is nonverbal with them, and especially in situations where you don't want to be heard, you're being clandestine with that. So my personal was with that. I wouldn't say that I didn't study to the fact that I wrote a paper or wrote anything on it, but I had a lot of exposure to it from an operational standpoint.
And she thank you for the conversation. In my case, I'm doing a study with for management, and what I study is I get fascinated how small animals can get a big animal. And when I found out is the strategy they do is they go the Achilles tendon, and actually has a lot to do with predators. They go, a hyena or a coyote is going to go and kill or go to any part of the body that can make them bleed faster. So they bite there, they make sure they're bleeding, and the stress of the big animal is going to make them run and bleed faster. And when the animal is weak, then when the pack attack. That is telling us about nature, no?
Yeah.
Animals are fascinated. And me, I need to keep up with the cats. They control the situation all the time. Jana, I adore you. I cannot wait to check on the calendar. Let's get another nerd time soon. We're going to review the cult information, and I'll tell you.
Yes, we always get a lot of value out of our nerd time. Thank you.
I adore you guys. Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't miss any questions, because what happened is I get too excited with some people when I talk. Again, this career has given me the luxury to be next to people that is amazing. So I want to share that amazingness with you. I see you next Wednesday. I don't know what we're going to do next Wednesday. I'm thinking about it. I have a couple of topics. Jana, I adore you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.